think we already fetched the data. We are displaying the data now on our browser here. So what we need now to do is to create a form where we are going to echo the data that we have, of course, now in the inputs. Then after that, we submit the data to the database. So we, of course, have 1, 2, 3, 4 items. So we expect to have like relevant inputs. So you can just use one input type equals text. So we need like four of them. Input type equals text. We can have the first, the second, the third, the fourth. First, the second, the third, then the fourth, and then maybe we can have a break tag in between so that our different inputs will not be in the same line. So let me put the break tags. So like I have two break tags after each. Then after that, maybe a button for submitting our data. So I can have input type equals submit. So this should act as our button. So for here, the name of my first input should be at least some relevant name based on maybe the columns that we are fetching on the database. So if I go to the database and select my database, then the table. So these columns here, they may be determinant of exactly what you want to achieve. So I have username, problem, score, and articles. So I can say username, problems, score, then articles. Okay. So then now this is a button. So of course, maybe if you are using Bootstrap, again you need like to see how you can have the Bootstrap classes uh, somewhere. Like I can just decide if I want to use Bootstrap. I'll of course now decide to generate the HTML stuff, and maybe somewhere in between here, in between the head, I can put my Bootstrap files there so that I can just use the Bootstrap classes. As usual, the way we normally do, instead of hard coding, you can just go straight, copy the links to your relevant Bootstrap files. So just copy, go to your work, paste there. Then now from there, when you call a Bootstrap class here, like class BTN, you're expecting your buttons to be a BTN, maybe BTN success, something like that. So this is dashboard. So let me open my application and see what I get. So localhost slash sample dashboard. There you go. Then click edit. You are taken here. So this is what we wanted. Now, the other thing that we need is to be able to put the data that we got inside our different text boxes or maybe the different inputs. Maybe if you want, you can still surround your form with uh, container class and surround your form with the container class. So you can just come here and say class equals container. Yeah, then automatically what does that do? That one is expected to create some space, some margin actually. Anyway, let's proceed. In between our different inputs, we need to have some value. Sorry, the value attribute. So value equals. So here we need now to specify this because this is the item that is having our values. So I will start with the array position 1. Remember the ID is fixed, you can't edit that, but now for the rest, yes, we can do that. So you can just say question mark less than 10 question mark equals array data at position 1, then now you close your array. So this is what is expected. Yeah, we are fetching that data straight from the DB. So we need to do that again for the rest. We need to do that for the other. So just copy, come here, create space, put that, come here, create space, put that, come here, create space, put that. So this is array position 1, array position 2, 3, 4. So automatically now we have the data that we fetched with us. There we go. So this data is because we picked array row number 5. If you pick row number 3, again that is what is expected. So we are giving the user now permissions of editing and putting what they want. Yeah, so they can put what they want. Then after that now, we now need now to click submit and take that data back to the DB, and that's now the end of our editing. So from there, now we are here. Our button name here is, maybe I can give it button edit. So I need now to proceed with my PHP once again. We need to proceed with my PHP once again. And then this time round, I'm going to start the process once afresh. So we are going to start with an if, because that is the syntax, and if text. We want to assume that we have created a new form. We are now pushing that data again afresh to the DB. So once you have an if function, remember on top here to create the method. So we said we are using method post for this case. So at this point, if is set is a function, an inbuilt function that accepts one parameter, and the parameter is our associative array posts. Posts, posts, straight brackets, single quote, the name of the button, this button here. So we are using that button again now to submit. So when it is clicked, what do we do? When it is clicked now, we can now collect the data once again afresh. User n, problem, score, articles. So we start again, dollar sign, user n equals, dollar sign underscore posts, straight bracket, single quotes, user n. So we need to capture data, all the data from the different inputs. So my first one was user end, the second is problems. The second is problems. I can just use the same names to avoid issues. Then the third one is score. So I can have here score. Then I use also a similar variable to capture. Then sorry. Then now articles. So articles. So we have the data once again with us. So from there, we write a query that is supposed to be for editing. So $sign query equals, we can now write our query here. So remember the query for editing, it's not just the normal query. So we need to know the syntax of the editing query. We call it updating. So we say update the table name, set a certain column equals some value, comma, another column equals some other value, comma, another column equals some other value, and then now we include the where clause. So let us begin. Update. What is the name of the table that we want to update data? So if you are not sure, go back and confirm the name. So update user data, update user data, set a certain column. Which column is this? Username. Set username equals some value, comma. What other problems? Problems equals some value, comma. Anything else? Score equals some value, comma. What else? Articles equals some value. Then now from there we say where uh, the unique column, which is now ID, equals the ID that we got from the previous page. Of course, we are still using the same ID that we got from the previous page. So where ID equals that. So where ID equals this. Okay, so what are these values here? So we are setting them to this. Username will set based on what the new value is after the user has edited. Then problems we also set to similar. Score we set it to the similar item. And then lastly articles. We set articles to that particular item. So this is how your application now should look like. So make sure you don't confuse the quotes. Make sure you don't confuse your quotes. Make sure you're not confusing the quotes. So that is what we have. So this is a query. So we need to execute the query. So I think I'm using MySQLi. So I'll just need to have here MySQLi underscore query, then in brackets, then I apply my query. Remember, my SQLite query takes two parameters, one being the connection string, then the other one being the query itself. So we need the connection, then now the query. So I think we already have executed. So when you are done, maybe you can create a variable here and say maybe the results. So results, or maybe you can say yeah, any variable name. So we can now use this variable name now to tell the user something. Like for example, we can have the message to the user that data was inserted successfully, editing was done successfully, or rather you can just decide to take the user back using the function header that takes the syntax, location, full column. We take people back to dashboard.php, something like that. So we have just updated and taken people back to the page where they came from. So unless there's an issue, then that is what was supposed to be done. So at this point, we just need to click any button, then change new data, submit. So let me confirm first whether my variables were to pick. Oh, they are all integers. I can only change the username. So let me go back there. I can only change the second item. So just say edit. Then from there I can change this to maybe something like new user. Then I say submit. When you say that, of course, the editing has done is successful, and then you can see. Now I can change this 0 to 1000 in my row 2. So I say 1000, then submit. Then you see data has been changed successfully. So thank you for watching. That is the process of editing. And if you just come across this video for the first time, remember we had like a previous video that was already recorded. Asante sana. Let's meet in the next class.